Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're unpacking a massive, really fascinating topic, the sheer intricacies of biodiversity, along with the legal and cultural playbooks used to actually conserve it. We're going to move way beyond the basics here and look closely at how India, literally one of the most ecologically diverse countries on Earth, manages its incredible environmental wealth. Let's just dive right in.
Now, to truly understand where we're headed, we kind of need to ground ourselves in a little history. Let's rewind to the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. They defined biodiversity there not just as, having a whole bunch of animals in one place. Instead, they defined it as the sheer variability among all living organisms. We're talking everything from the deepest oceans to the absolute highest mountains. It's the diversity within a single species, the diversity between completely different species, and honestly, the diversity of the entire ecosystems themselves. It is the whole shebang.
So, here is our roadmap for today. First, what is biodiversity? Second, India's ecological wealth. Third, strategies for conservation. Fourth, the protected area network. And finally, communities and conservation.
All right, Section 1. What is biodiversity? Moving beyond just lots of animals.
So, ecology actually works on three distinct scales. First, starting at the most microscopic level, we have genetic diversity. That's basically the total number of genetic characteristics in the makeup of a single species. Next, we zoom out a bit to species diversity. This is the number of different species living within a biological community and, how evenly they're distributed. And then finally, we pull all the way back to ecosystem diversity. This looks at the massive variations in physical habitats, like oceans, lakes, and forests, and how all these different environments interact with each other.
But how do scientists actually measure all of this wild variety? Well, they use some pretty stark contrasts. First, they look at alpha diversity. This one is highly localized. It's literally just counting the species within one specific ecosystem. Then they use comparative beta diversity, which measures the unique differences when you compare two completely separate ecosystems side by side. And finally, gamma diversity. This one takes the widest lens possible, measuring the overall diversity for an entire regional landscape. It's really just a perfect mathematical way to quantify nature's crazy complexity.
Moving on to Section 2, India's ecological wealth, mapping a mega biodiversity country.
Just to wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about here, check this out. The Deccan Peninsula alone makes up a staggering 43% of India's entire landmass. That is huge. It's this vast region packed with deciduous forest, thorn forest, and an absolute incredible array of fauna. We're talking black bucks, gores, wild buffaloes. The sheer size of this single zone alone provides a massive foundation for biodiversity.
But if there's one crucial number you need to remember from this, it's the number 4. Because out of the 34 globally recognized biodiversity hotspots on the entire planet, an impressive 4 of them are located entirely or at least partially right within India. Let's look at exactly what those 4 hotspots actually are. We've got the towering Himalaya, the incredibly diverse Indo-Burma region, the island ecosystems of the Sindalands, and the incredibly lush Western Ghats in Sri Lanka. These 4 specific areas house just an immense amount of fragile life. In fact, because of regions exactly like these, nearly 33% of all recorded flora in India is endemic. Now that is a massive takeaway. Endemic basically means those plants exist nowhere else on Earth. If we lose them in India, they're literally gone from the universe forever.
Which brings us to Section 3, strategies for conservation. How do we protect this wealth?
Okay, so there are 2 main strategies in the conservation playbook, and it really comes down to where the actual protection happens. On one side, we have in situ conservation, meaning on-site. This is all about protecting animals and plants right in their natural wild habitats. Think of your classic national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. On the flip side, we have ex situ conservation, meaning off-site. This comes into play when a habitat is, frankly, just too dangerous or degraded. So we actually remove the threatened species and bring them into human care. This could be botanical gardens, zoos, or even really high-tech solutions like cryopreservation, where genetic material is literally frozen in liquid nitrogen to save it for future generations. Pretty wild stuff.
Let's look closer at those areas in Section 4, the protected area network, untangling the bureaucracy.
Let's look at the legal differences between the 2 most famous types of protected areas, wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. While both are obviously critical, they operate very differently under the law.
Sanctuaries provide protection to an entire ecosystem, and generally speaking, they're relatively less restricted. You can often go in without any official permission. National parks, however, they demand strict exclusion. They are reserved exclusively for wildlife, human activity is heavily restricted, and you actually need permission from the chief wildlife warden just to step foot inside. So it's essentially a sliding scale of environmental defense.
Now, looking beyond just national laws, there's also an international layer to this. Biosphere reserves, which are recognized by UNESCO's Man in the Biosphere program. They use this really brilliant three-tier system to safely balance strict wildlife preservation with sustainable human settlements. Right in the middle, you have the core area, which is strictly protected. Surrounding that is a buffer zone, mainly used for research and education. And wrapping around all of it is the transition area. This is where human communities can actually live and conduct sustainable economic activities. It's a really smart model designed for harmony rather than just pure exclusion.
Furthermore, to make sure these protected areas aren't just immediately swallowed up by growing cities, the boundaries of these parks are defended by what are called eco-sensitive zones, or ESZs. Think of these as vital legal shock absorbers. Spanning up to 10 kilometers around a protected area, they don't ban all human life or anything, but they strictly regulate encroaching urbanization. This basically means they block major industrial, mining, or highly polluting industries from setting up shop right on the absolute border of a pristine forest.
Finally, Section 5. Communities and Conservation. Bridging Law and Indigenous Knowledge.
We're currently seeing a really vital paradigm shift in how we think about saving nature. The old way of doing things is the colonial model of conservation, and this outdated approach essentially views all human presence purely as a threat to nature, often forcibly removing people and totally denying indigenous rights. But thankfully, we are shifting toward the cultural model. This model is built entirely on respect. It acknowledges the rights of indigenous peoples, it deeply values their ancient traditional knowledge, and it actively embraces forest dwellers as essential guardians and co-managers of the ecosystem. It's a total game changer.
And real indigenous groups are proving out in the field that the cultural model actually works. For example, in Rajasthan, the Bishnoi tribe considers trees to be so sacred that they actually organize their own local tiger force for protection. In Gujarat, the Muldahari tribe manages a peaceful coexistence with literal apex predators, lions, right in the Gir forest. Over in Arunachal Pradesh, the Bagun tribe actively saved a critically endangered bird and won a national award for it. Meanwhile, the Naishi tribe's conservation of hornbills was so incredibly successful, it sparked an entire state conservation festival. It goes to show people are a part of nature, not just a threat to it.
A perfect, widespread example of this human-nature coexistence is the concept of sacred groves. Basically, these are patches of forest protected by local communities entirely because of their religious beliefs and their dedication to local deities. There are no government fences here. None. It is pure spiritual reverence translating directly into highly effective, community-led ecosystem protection. In fact, in a lot of these groves, even cutting down a single living branch is strictly forbidden by local custom.
And it's honestly astounding to see just how widespread this tradition is across India. I mean, look at this. States like Himachal Pradesh are maintaining an estimated 5,000 of these privately conserved forests. Maharashtra has nearly 3,000, and Kerala has 2,000. Keep in mind, these aren't managed by some massive government bureaucracy. They are maintained solely by local belief systems, completely proving that culture itself can be a massive engine for ecological preservation.
So as we wrap up this explainer, looking at all this data, the legal policies, and the immense ecological wealth at stake, it really leaves us with a provocative thought to carry forward. Are traditional communities the actual missing link in modern conservation? With all of our modern science and complex legal frameworks, must we actually look backward to ancient cultural coexistence and a deep-rooted respect for nature in order to successfully move forward with modern environmental protection? It is a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.